Welcome back, you guys. My name is Marcus if you're new here, and right here in front of me is the 2024 Honda Prologue, Honda's first all-electric SUV. Of course, it is based on GM's Ultium platform underneath, and the luxury version is the Acura ZDX. I just reviewed that last week if you guys want to check it out, but sitting here in this pearl white looks phenomenal. It looks fantastic. We'll get into it. We'll go for a quick POV drive and see how it compares to the CR-V Touring, the hybrid Touring model, because it's a very comparable model in Honda's lineup, and you have to make the choice effectively between a hybrid or an EV. That's how I see it. You know, some people say, why are you comparing EVs to hybrid or gasoline vehicles? That doesn't make any sense to me. Under here, we have an 85 kilowatt hour battery. That's good for 439 kilometers of range or 273 miles. Now, this is the Touring model. In the States, this same model is called the Elite, and then the Touring model for you guys in the States is the equivalent pretty much of the EXL here in Canada. Confusing, I know, but one of the things you get with the Prologue Touring here in Canada are these 21-inch wheels. I think they look pretty cool. You know, they've done something different versus especially Hyundai and Genesis. They've got a lot of angles, and Honda just kind of kept it simple with the Prologue. I think it's a great looking SUV. The ZDX looks good. It has a few more edges and lines, a little bit busier to look at, but God, this is a great looking SUV. It's also massive. It is huge here. Of course, that comes down to the GM underpinnings, a big American vehicle. It looks great. It's got a little bit of a sloped back, not too low. I'm 5'9" and I am way taller than the Prologue, so it's a little bit lower than the CR-V, and it is quite a bit longer than the CR-V, especially we see that in the hood here. But let's come around back. Before we do, EXL and Touring trims get the LED fog lights, and we are able to charge up to 150 kilowatts here with all models. In the States, you are able to spec a front wheel drive model. Here in Canada, the base is the all-wheel drive mid-tier range. Starting price here in Canada is 60,000 Canadian. That is 50,000 US dollars. And then as tested here, the Touring or the Elite for you guys in the States, all-wheel drive is $72,000 Canadian or 60,000 USD. A lot of money, but that is exactly why I wanted to compare it to the CR-V Hybrid, a vehicle I thoroughly enjoy. And the rear end looks really good as well. They've carried over this bar that you see in the front, same kind of similar design on the rear here, not too much going on, and then the bottom of the car is all gloss black as well. The Touring also gets 275 wide tires with those 21-inch wheels, so a little bit more grip there as well. This thing weighs a lot, but not as quite as much as the ZDX. The ZDX weighs about 6,000 pounds. This, just over 5,200 pounds. Cargo space. This is where we can compare it to the CR-V. Way less cargo space behind the rear seats, and if they were folded down, of course, that's probably very likely due to the fact that we have a massive battery underneath. We have 2 electric motors, so you do have to consider that, although it's spacious. It is spacious. Just when you look at the exterior of the car, it's so large, and then the interior cargo space just doesn't quite match up to what you see. Although there is a little bit of a tub here where you could fit some extra things that did not exist in the ZDX because the battery is bigger and it has different motors, which is also why you get different charging speeds. The ZDX charges up to 190 kilowatts. This is up to 150. And I didn't even have to press anything. I guess it detected my foot. It does that sometimes on accident if you don't mean to do it. What is this, Honda? What is this? I thought it maybe extended a little bit, this rear wiper, but it doesn't. That is the smallest wiper. May as well make it clean. Delete that. That would be great, Honda. In the rear, we do have fairly good leg room. It's not a 2-row, of course, but we do here in the Touring model get leather. We get a leather steering wheel and leather seats. That's also in the EXL model. And then back here with the Touring, we get a full 120 outlet there. We got 2 USB-C ports, tons of legroom, expansive moonroof. The EXL model gets that as well. You do begin to feel a little bit of these materials that aren't so great on the bottom of the doors and stuff, and especially here in the back seat. It's not quite up to par of what you would get in other Honda models, other touring Honda models, especially. A little bit less headroom here as well than the CR-V hybrid, but it's not bad. The slope on the rear isn't too bad. It's not quite like a GV60 or something like that. And coming to the front seat here, we do with the Touring get these 12-way adjustable seats, leather seats, like I mentioned, with adjustable lumbar, which is awesome. Few different materials in the front here, some nice soft touch materials up top, some leather trimmed surfaces. Don't mind my camera here. And this looks like a GM product, and that was the same in the ZDX, of course. It's hard to escape a lot of the GM switchgear here, although all the climate is here all the time. Pause for seatbelt chime, which is nice. The only thing you do have to bring up here in the digital display here, 11.3 inches here, 11 inches there, is the sync button. So if you want to sync the dual zone climate control, which is standard on all Prologues, then you do have to go into the menu. Everything else is here. Awesome. The Touring gets ventilated seats, really good ventilated seats. Heated seats are standard, and then the heated steering wheel with the Touring model as well. Big steering wheel. A few other Honda products have better steering wheels here. When I put my hands at 9 and 3, I can kind of feel these controls a little bit with my thumb. I never accidentally hit anything, but it's just not as comfortable as it could be. If you look around the back here, that's your volume control. You also do have a volume hard knob there, which is nice. And then on the side here, we do have an additional regen brake paddle. So if I hold that, it will begin to slow the car down quite aggressively. And then on the back there, can't see them now, but there are two other buttons, and that's to change your track. First thing you might notice, parking brake is down here, and your sport mode button, which is exclusive to the Touring model, is also down here. A little bit of an awkward placement, but it works. It's okay. Seats are great. They're not quite up to the Acura standards, as you would expect, but they are large, they're comfortable. Everything has a little bit of an air of American manufacturer to it. So the seats are big. Tons of storage here. Get this flat spot here, which is good. You've got a bunch of space underneath here. You could throw some bags or whatever. And then your wireless phone charger in the middle here. And your center console is huge. And a little tray there as well. Is there a frunk? Do we have more storage? No. It's an electric motor. 288 horsepower here, 333 pound-feet of torque. Let's go for a drive, shall we? I do really love, before we do go for a drive, I do love this white spec, the pearl white with the black. There's no chrome, love that, thank you Honda. And it's just simple. I think it doesn't jump out, but it's good looking enough to where it can compete with some of the other models. You know, get into a GV60 or just look at a GV60. It's busy, there's a lot of angles. You really have to like that styling to get behind it, where I think the Prologue has a bit more of a broader appeal. Before we go, Touring model gets the 360 cam, really high res. There's a few options here that we can pull up as well. Don't curb your wheels. Very useful. It does not have a hard button, but if I go back to the main menu, home, like I just did, and you hit camera, that's fine. Infotainment works good. Of course, it's not like Honda's models, so if you're coming from any other Acura or Honda model, this will be a little bit of a learning curve. Up here is actually your headlight controls, which is a little bit odd, but you don't really touch those too often, so not a big deal. And then your one pedal drive, and you can set your regen braking setting. I don't really drive with one pedal. I would rather have my EV feel a little bit more like a gasoline powered vehicle with a little bit of just natural kind of feeling engine braking. Google Maps is built in, very responsive. I mean, overall the infotainment is quick to learn. It's easy and responsive, and there are quite a few settings. Wireless Android Auto and Apple CarPlay is also standard. Oh, and you get the HUD, heads-up display, with the Touring model. The EXL and up get the 12-speaker Bose audio system. Great system here. Another piece of Google tech that is built in are the maps that I can display in the center there on my gauge display. Awesome. All right, first thing you might notice is the noise. So I know that in North America and probably every other country on the planet pretty much has noise regulations for the outside of EVs, that they have to make some kind of noise for pedestrian safety, right? The Prologue has a ton of noise at low speed creeping in on the inside. That doesn't seem necessary to me. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't think it's mandated that the passengers of the vehicle also can hear that noise, and it's pumped in. I haven't found a setting to be able to turn that off. That's kind of annoying. It's very loud. And then the actual motor sounds, if we give it some gas here, not gas, Marcus, electricity, there is a little bit of an engine, an electric motor whirring sound, just kind of like a fake sound, give you some feedback for how much throttle you're giving it and how quickly you're going. I don't have any way of turning that off. Not the biggest deal though. 333 pound-feet of torque is plenty here. Now, of course, like I mentioned, it weighs a lot, but it does have a decent center of gravity. It's fairly low down, as most EVs are, and about 54% of that weight is over the front axle, which isn't as bad as the MDX, but not quite as good as the ZDX. Heads-up display is clear. Steering wheel is big. First thing I noticed coming out of the ZDX Type S, I might mention, the steering rack here is not nearly as quick. It's a lot quicker in the Type S, meaning it takes a lot less input in that vehicle to actually change direction. Here, it's not so bad when you're moving quickly. You don't see my hands moving too much, but at lower speeds or in a parking lot, you're really having to kind of go hand over hand and move the steering wheel lock to lock a lot. It's one of the first things I noticed. It's not ideal, but again, coming back to the kind of, I don't want to say lazy American feel, but it does have just a large American vehicle vibe. We see that when we look out the hood, but another byproduct of that is the car rides exceptionally smooth. It's incredibly quiet as well, which is a huge standout thing versus the CR-V hybrid that does have a little bit of noise. You know, the gas engine is coming on, it's shutting off. While you don't hear it a lot, it's very quiet. They've gone to extreme measures to kind of quiet that down as much as possible, and it's good, but nothing beats an EV as far as a quiet vehicle, and sound deadening here is great. The ride is good, even though it doesn't have the ZDX's air suspension. Steering's very light here. That's another reason why I tend to keep it in sport mode. There's not a ton of feel coming through. So it feels a little bit lighter than the ZDX. I will give it that. Sorry for the bags back there making some noise. But just great visibility, with exception to the rear window. The rear window, because of that sloped back, is not the greatest. Yeah, a ton of turns lock to lock. Let's go from a dig here, see how it does. That's 60 miles an hour. Plenty of torque. Throw it in sport mode. The steering weights up just a little bit. Very, very subtle though. I just keep it in sport mode all the time. Usually it has a larger effect. It did in the ZDX, but here, not a large change, which is fine with me. Overall, the Prologue does everything it kind of set out to do, and even the name of the vehicle, the Prologue, as a Gran Turismo nerd from my childhood, you guys remember when Gran Turismo 5 Prologue came out? and everybody just trashed on that game because Gran Turismo 5 took so long, it was in development for so long, that they had to come out with a full standalone game, but it was called Prologue, and it wasn't even a tenth of what the full game ended up being, and you had, I don't know, 10 cars to choose from and like 2 racetracks. It was awful. It was terrible. It was basically a demo. Is the Honda Prologue that? Not quite. It is a very good commuter. You get a ton of range. It's very comfortable. It's incredibly spacious, as you can see here. Just, you know, did Honda have to come out with the Prologue while they're waiting to expand massively into their own EV facilities and electric motors and whatnot? They're building a huge factory in Ontario, I believe it is, in the next few years, and they do have some new electric vehicles that will be all Honda around 2026. So the question is it worth it? Should you just wait for Honda's other EV offerings coming down the pipeline, or do you need an EV right now? The other question is, do you even need an EV at all? And that's where the CR-V hybrid comes in. What would I do? What am I gonna buy? All right, so what would I do? Hey guys, what's going on? I wouldn't necessarily buy an EV. So this is just going to be my consumer advice to you guys. I'm at no point in my life where I am looking to buy an EV SUV for a daily driver, but maybe you are. So I wanted to compare it to the CR-V hybrid because it is quite a bit smaller, it is a little bit taller, but you get a ton more cargo space in a vehicle that looks a lot smaller in person than the Prologue. It's a lot shorter, and it just amazes me how Honda's able to package that vehicle versus here. I'm surprised at how little cargo space it has for how big it looks on the outside. Huge difference there, not to mention the price. So a fully spec'd out CR-V hybrid Touring will run you about $50,000 Canadian or $40,000 USD, $20,000 less than a fully spec'd out Prologue. You really have to kind of weigh your options. Like I said in the intro, some people say, hey, why are you comparing an EV with a hybrid or gasoline powered vehicle? That makes zero sense to me. As a consumer, I want to drive what's the most efficient and effective and fits my lifestyle the best, right? That CR-V hybrid gets an average of 37 miles per gallon or 6.4 liters per 100 kilometers. Plenty good for my daily driving commutes, and not to mention you can go much longer before having to fill up that vehicle, and it's a fully self-contained hybrid. You never have to plug it in. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. That's what I would do. Just consumer advice. I'm not buying either of these cars. Subscribe if you haven't already. We're driving some exciting stuff coming up, some really fast stuff, and I have some trips just on the horizon you guys might want to see. So see you then.